teachers, what's the wildest attempt a student ever made to pin something on you that you never did? I'm midway through my turkey sandwich when my email dings. It's Principal Horn's subject line. Urgent, get to my office. No context, no hint of why. Just those 4 words in all caps, followed by parents threatening a lawsuit. My chest starts pounding. What if the person you poured your heart into, the one who called you family, turned around and tried to destroy your life? I found myself fighting for my entire career, my teaching license on the line, all because my favorite student, Jenna, somehow used my own phone to frame me as a predator. I'd been a teacher for 6 years, never even a parking ticket, let alone a lawsuit threat. So when the office summoned me, I literally abandoned my lunch, speed-walking through the hallways. My mind raced. Did a kid get hurt? Did I fail someone unfairly? My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. A lawsuit that could mean my teaching license, my entire career, everything I'd worked for since college, just gone. When I reached the main office, I saw them through the glass door. 2 parents, their faces etched with absolute fury, sitting across from Principal Horns. And between them, my student, Jenna, arms crossed, staring at the floor. Everyone turned to look at me as I walked in, and the temperature in that room felt like it plunged 20 degrees. Here's the thing, though. Jenna had been my favorite student all year. Hands down the best part of my day. She'd always stay after class, just to chat about books or ask about my weekend. She even started bringing me coffee every Friday because she noticed I looked tired. She called me the only teacher who actually gets me, and honestly, it felt good to hear that. Teaching can be pretty thankless sometimes. Under my mentoring, her grades went from C's and D's to straight A's, a complete transformation. She even nominated me for Teacher of the Year, writing this heartfelt essay about how I'd changed her perspective on learning. I spent hours tutoring her for free, even came in on Saturdays to help with her college essay because her parents both worked and couldn't afford a private tutor. Just last month, her mom and dad sent me a handmade thank you card, saying I'd changed Jenna's life and they were forever grateful. And just last week, Jenna gave me another card with a drawing she made, saying I was like family to her. So when Principal Horns looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, his voice flat as he asked me to explain the inappropriate relationship with Jenna, I was so startled. My body moved like a glitching Sims character. What? I stammered. There's no relationship. I'm her teacher. Jenna's mother stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly across the floor. Then she slammed a thick folder onto Principal Horns's desk. Then explain these, she spat. The folder opened, spilling out pages and pages of printed text messages. I leaned forward, my stomach clenching. My phone number, clear as day, was listed at the top over a dozen times, supposedly calling Jenna. Then I saw my number used in a conversation with Jenna's number. The messages, they were bad. Really bad. Overly familiar stuff about Jenna's personal problems. Late-night conversations, like 2 a.m. on school nights. Inside jokes that sounded way too friendly for a teacher-student relationship. I felt disgusted, but I needed to know what I was being accused of. My hands shaking, I flipped through the pages. Messages about meeting up outside school, grabbing coffee on weekends, discussing Jenna's dating life in detail. Then I saw one that made my blood run cold. Don't tell your parents we're talking like this. And the worst one, the one that made Jenna's dad actually stand up, looking like he wanted to hit me. You're so mature for your age, not like my other students. I looked up at Principal Horns, my voice barely a whisper. I never sent any of these. I've never texted Jenna outside of school, except for reminders I sent to my whole class roster. Jenna's mom started to cry. Just admit what you did. With hands that wouldn't stop trembling, I pulled out my own phone, ready to prove it, to show them my actual messages. But when I opened my texts, the conversation was there. In my phone. I started scrolling back, and there were months of these messages. Messages I absolutely did not write. My mouth went dry. How was this even possible? I looked at Jenna, who sat there staring at the floor, not looking at anyone. Jenna. I managed, my voice cracking. Tears started running down her face. I saw her dad take a step towards me, ready to send me to the hospital. I tried again, my voice gaining a desperate edge. Jenna, you know I never sent these messages. You know that. Tell them the truth, right now. This is my life, Jenna. Why would you ruin it? Jenna just sat there crying, saying nothing. I turned back to Principal Horns, forcing my voice to be steady, even though I was shaking inside. Check the phone records. The real phone records from the carrier. The metadata will prove I never sent any of these. Then I walked out of that office, Jenna's father mid-scream about ruining my life, knowing this was just the beginning. I walked straight to my car, my hands still shaking. I got in and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel. 20 minutes passed before I could even try to make my breathing go back to normal. My phone, still in my pocket, felt wrong, like it was burning through my jeans, even though I knew that was stupid. I couldn't stop thinking about those messages, sitting there in my texts, like proof of something I never did. I pulled it out, stared at it, then shoved it back in my pocket because just looking at it made me want to throw up. Finally, I remembered the teacher's union number I'd saved years ago, but never needed. My hands were still shaking as I dialed. A woman answered on the second ring, her voice calm and professional. Words just spilled out of me. Fake messages, Jenna's parents, how my phone had conversations I never sent. She listened without interrupting. When I stopped to breathe, she told me in a steady voice to go home, right now, and touch nothing on my phone until she called me back. She said her name was Veronica Goodwin, and she was going to help me. I drove home on autopilot, barely remembering the route. Veronica called back within an hour, explaining she was my union rep now. The first rule: 0 statements to anyone without her there. 0. She started asking detailed questions about my relationship with Jenna. I told her everything. Every coffee she brought, every after-school chat, every Saturday tutoring session. The time she stayed late while I graded papers. I heard her taking notes on the other end, the scratch of pen on paper, and it made everything feel more real and more scary. She asked about gifts, and I told her about the thank you cards, the drawing. She asked if I ever texted Jenna, and I explained about the class roster reminders I sent to all students. She asked if anyone else had access to my phone, and I said no. But even as I said it, I wasn't totally sure. That night, I couldn't sleep. At midnight, I was still scrolling through the fake messages again, this sick feeling in my stomach growing worse with every swipe. Months of conversations, dozens of exchanges, happening at times I knew I was asleep or in faculty meetings or teaching class. The tone sounded nothing like how I talked to students. Different words, different phrases. Too casual, too friendly, using slang I didn't even know. It was like reading someone else's conversation. Except my number was right there at the top. I started noticing the timestamps clustered around 2 and 3 in the morning on school nights. That made no sense. I'm always asleep by 11 p.m. Everyone at school knew I was a morning person. I took screenshots of every single message, with the timestamps visible, building my own file of documentation. It made me feel dirty just looking at them, reading words I never wrote about things I never said. But I kept going, saving every screenshot to a folder on my phone. Around 4 a.m., still awake, something clicked, and I went completely cold. Jenny used to stay after class almost every day. Sometimes I'd leave my phone on my desk while I wrote on the board or helped other students. She brought me coffee every Friday and would stand there chatting while I unlocked my phone to check my calendar or respond to parent emails. I trusted her completely. She was my favorite student. I even handed her my unlocked phone once when she asked to call her mom because her battery was dead. How long was she alone with it? 5 minutes? 10. Long enough to do something? My email pinged at 6 a.m. It was from Principal Horn's subject line, administrative leave. My heart pounded as I opened it. Cold. Formal. Effective immediately, I was on paid administrative leave. I needed to surrender my classroom keys and school laptop by end of day. Nothing personal. No acknowledgement of the 6 years we'd worked together. Just procedures, requirements, and formal language that made me feel like a criminal. I met Veronica in person at the district office later that morning. She was in her 50s, with short gray hair and sharp eyes behind glasses. She shook my hand firmly and immediately made me feel less alone, like someone was actually on my side. In a conference room, she laid it all out, an HR investigation that could take weeks, possible police involvement if the parents pushed it, a potential license board review that could end my career. Sitting there, I realized this could get so much worse than I'd even imagined. Veronica gave me clear instructions, which I wrote down with shaking hands. Preserve my phone exactly as it was. Don't delete or add anything. Document every interaction with Jenna since the start of the school year. Create a timeline of my daily schedule, showing when I was usually asleep or in meetings. And the hardest one, absolutely do not try to contact Jenna or her parents. Anything I said to them could be used against me later. I took notes on everything, my brain short-circuiting, terrified I'd forget something important. That night, I went through my phone more carefully, looking at settings, accounts, apps I normally never checked. Buried in my inbox, I found an old email from Apple months ago. Subject line: your Apple ID was used to sign in. I opened it. It said my Apple ID was used to sign into messages on a Mac. The date? Last October, right around the time Jenna started bringing me coffee every Friday. I stared at that date for a long time, my hands going cold. I don't own a Mac, and I never signed into messages on any computer except my own laptop. I pulled up my calendar, scrolled back to October, looking for that date. My hands shook a little. And then I found it. Friday, October 13th, parent-teacher conferences had run late that week. Jenna had stayed after because her mom couldn't make the scheduled time. I'd been rushing around, making copies of progress reports. Jenna asked if she could use my phone to call her mom, because hers was dead. I unlocked it and handed it to her without even thinking. She was my favorite student. I trusted her completely. I left her alone in my classroom with my unlocked phone for maybe 10 minutes while I ran to the copy room. That's all it would have taken. 10 minutes. To get into my settings, write down my Apple ID, set up two-factor authentication on another device. My stomach twisted. I had given her everything she needed, and I hadn't even realized it. It was almost 10 p.m., but this felt too important to wait. I called Veronica. She answered on the third ring. I started talking fast, explaining about the Apple email, the date, Jenna borrowing my phone. Veronica's voice got this edge of excitement I hadn't heard before. She cut me off. This could be exactly what we need. She told me she'd connect me with a digital forensics expert first thing tomorrow. Someone who could examine my phone and document everything properly. She made me promise not to do anything else with my phone tonight. Just leave it alone and get some sleep if I could. I agreed, even though I knew there was no way I was sleeping. After we hung up, I just sat on my couch, staring at my phone like it was evidence in a crime scene, which I guess it was. The next morning, I met Ahmed at a quiet coffee shop downtown. He was younger than I expected, early 30s, wearing jeans and a hoodie like he'd just rolled out of bed. But the second I showed him my phone, his whole expression changed. He had this laser focus that made me feel like I was in good hands. He asked me to walk him through everything while he took notes on his laptop. I explained about the fake messages, the Apple email, my theory about Jenna. Ahmed nodded along. He explained in terms I could understand that if someone got my Apple ID login, they could set up messages on a Mac or iPad, and any texts they sent would show up as coming from my number. The messages would sync to my phone automatically through iCloud, and I'd never know unless I was specifically looking for another device on my account. Ahmed connected my phone to his laptop. He needed to do a complete forensic backup right now, he said, before anyone could claim I deleted or changed anything. He kept talking while he worked, showing me how to navigate to my Apple ID settings, how to check what devices were connected. I watched over his shoulder as he scrolled through the list. And there it was, a device listed as Mac that I'd never owned or used. My heart started beating faster. This was actual proof. Ahmed screenshotted everything. The device name, serial number, last activity date. Then he showed me the timestamp on the unknown Mac. Last activity was 2:47 a.m., 3 days ago. I pulled up the folder of fake messages on my phone and scrolled to that exact time. And there was a message to Jenna, sent at 2:47 a.m. The timing matched perfectly. This proves someone else was accessing your messages, Ahmed explained, but we'll need more evidence to show it wasn't just you using a different device. He said anyone could argue I bought a Mac and used it myself. Ahmed suggested checking with my phone carrier to get records of actual SMS texts versus iMessages. He explained that SMS texts go through the cellular network and leave different records than iMessage, which go through Apple servers. If we could show I sent 0 SMS texts to Jenna's number, it would support the theory that someone was using my Apple ID to send iMessages from another device. I called my carrier right there at the coffee shop and requested detailed records for the past 6 months. The customer service person put me on hold, then came back saying it would take 3 business days to compile everything. 3 more days of waiting, my life on hold. Ahmed packed up his laptop, saying he'd write up a preliminary report by tomorrow afternoon. I was driving home when my email pinged. At a red light, I glanced at it. It was from Ronan Marshall in HR, subject line, formal investigatory interview. Scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. My stomach dropped. Veronica would attend with me, which I was grateful for, but the email listed the subjects of inquiry as boundary violations and inappropriate conduct. Seeing those words in official HR language made everything feel more real, more serious. This wasn't just an accusation anymore. This was a formal investigation, with official procedures and potential career-ending consequences. The light turned green, and someone honked behind me. I was just sitting there, staring at my phone. That evening, my phone started buzzing with texts from other teachers. At first, 1 or 2, asking if I was okay. Then more. Lisa from math, Noah from history, asking if the rumors were true. I didn't even know what rumors until Noah sent me a screenshot from the parent Facebook group. Someone had posted that a teacher at our school is on leave for an inappropriate relationship with a student. My name wasn't mentioned, but the post already had dozens of comments. Parents demanding to know who it was. Someone saying they heard it was a male English teacher. Another pulling their kid out of school. The staff group chat was blowing up, too. Against my better judgment, I opened Facebook on my laptop and searched for posts about the school. There was one from a parent I didn't even recognize. A teacher at our school has been grooming a student, and parents need to be aware. 3 people had tagged the school's official page. Parents asking who it was, why they hadn't been arrested. Someone commented that they heard the teacher was still being paid while on leave. Unacceptable. Then another parent. My daughter heard from a friend that it's my actual name. Now it was out there, publicly connected to words like grooming and inappropriate. I felt sick reading it, but I couldn't stop scrolling. My phone rang. It was Veronica. In a firm voice, she told me to immediately lock down all my social media accounts and stop reading anything online. The court of public opinion moves faster than actual investigation, she said. Right now, I needed to focus on building my defense, not defending myself in Facebook comments. Anything I posted publicly could be used against me. I needed to stay completely silent, no matter how much I wanted to explain my side. She asked if I'd been responding to any teacher texts. I told her I hadn't, except to say I couldn't talk about it. Exactly right, she said. Keep doing that. I'll see you tomorrow morning. After we hung up, I went through and changed all my privacy settings. Then I closed all the apps and put my phone face down on the table. I couldn't trust myself not to keep checking. 3 days later, the carrier records showed up in my email as a PDF. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped my phone downloading it. I scrolled through pages of data, every text message sent from my number for the past 6 months. There was a column, SMS versus iMessage. Every single message to Jenna's number showed up as iMessage, not SMS. 0 regular text messages went from my phone to hers during any of the times those fake conversations supposedly happened. I forwarded the PDF to Veronica immediately. She called back within 10 minutes. This is exactly what we needed. The HR interview was the next morning. I barely slept. I showed up at the district office in a button-down shirt and tie, as Veronica advised. She met me in the lobby, a folder full of documents tucked under her arm. We walked into a conference room. Ronan was already there, laptop open, a legal pad covered in notes. He shook my hand, his grip firm, his face giving nothing away. Veronica sat beside me, placing her folder on the table between us, like she was ready for battle. Ronan started by reading me my rights, explaining that anything I said could be used in employment decisions and potentially legal proceedings. Then, he opened his laptop, pulling up what looked like a timeline of events. He asked me to explain the Apple ID situation from the beginning. I walked him through finding the email about my account being used on an unknown Mac. Ronan typed notes, but his expression remained skeptical, like he'd heard excuses before, and mine wasn't landing. He asked why I was tutoring Jenna on Saturdays without filing volunteer paperwork. I admitted I didn't know I needed paperwork for informal tutoring. I was just trying to help a student who couldn't afford a private tutor. Ronan wrote that down, then asked about the coffee she brought me and the handmade cards. My face got hot. I knew how it looked now, even though it felt innocent at the time. I explained that accepting small gifts from students felt normal, that other teachers got holiday cookies or thank you notes. But Ronan pointed out that weekly coffee and personal cards with drawings saying, "I'm like family, cross a line." I tried to separate the boundary issues from the message accusations. I told him I understood I got too comfortable with informal mentoring, but that didn't mean I sent inappropriate texts. Ronan just kept taking notes, saying the investigation would continue while they verified my technical claims about the Apple ID. The whole interview took 90 minutes. By the end, I felt like I'd been put through a grinder. Veronica walked me out to the parking lot. "You did fine," she said. "Admitting the boundary mistakes actually helps. It shows you're being honest instead of defensive." 2 days later, Ahmed called with more findings that made my stomach flip. He'd traced the IP address of that unknown Mac. It was coming from an internet provider that serviced Jenna's neighborhood. It wasn't definitive proof, since IP addresses can be masked, but combined with everything else, it was building a strong case that someone in her area was accessing my account. He explained the technical details, half of which went over my head, but I wrote it all down. Veronica called that same afternoon. We needed to bring in an education law attorney to coordinate with both the union and potential police involvement. She recommended Benjamin Kim, who specialized in defending teachers against false accusations. I asked how much an attorney cost. Veronica said the union would cover part of it, but I should expect to pay around $5,000 out of pocket. I felt sick hearing that number. I didn't have $5,000 just sitting around. I met Benjamin the next week in his downtown office, in a glass building that made me feel out of place in my teacher clothes. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40s, in an expensive-looking suit, sitting behind a huge desk covered in case files. He shook my hand and immediately started firing rapid-fire questions. My relationship with Jenna, the timeline, the evidence. I showed him everything. Carrier records, Ahmed's report, the Apple ID email, my documentation of where I was when messages were sent. Benjamin spread it all out, studying each document, making notes. He explained that even if we proved the messages were fake, I'd still face consequences for the boundary violations. But the difference between inappropriate conduct and poor judgment was the difference between losing my teaching license forever and keeping my career with some disciplinary action. He started building a defense strategy right there, talking about how we'd present the technical evidence and frame the boundary issues as mistakes in judgment, not intentional misconduct. 2 days later, the school resource officer, Leah, contacted me, requesting a voluntary statement. I forwarded her email to Benjamin. He called immediately, declined the request. Anything I said to Leah could be used in both the employment case and a potential criminal case, he explained. We needed more evidence before I made any official statements to law enforcement. I felt trapped. Declining to talk made me look guilty. But Benjamin said it was standard legal strategy. A week later, the district forwarded me a demand letter from Jenna's parents' attorney. 3 pages of legal language, threatening a lawsuit for negligent supervision and failure to protect their daughter from a predatory teacher. It included direct quotes from the fake messages, the ones about not telling parents and her being mature for her age. It demanded I be immediately terminated and criminally prosecuted, giving the district 30 days to respond. Reading those words made me feel like I was going to throw up. This was my life they were destroying with lies. The next blow came in an email from HR. I was being removed from my role as academic decathlon club advisor, effective immediately. That $3,000 annual stipend didn't sound like much, but it was money I counted on for rent and bills. The email said they couldn't have me in any student-facing role while under investigation. My finances were already tight from the attorney fees, and now I was losing income on top of it. Late one night, unable to sleep, I went through every single interaction with Jenna in my memory, trying to figure out how this happened. I remembered that day in October when she asked to borrow my phone because hers was dead. I'd unlocked it, handed it to her without thinking twice, then got pulled into a conversation with another student about a late assignment. Jenna had my phone for maybe 5 minutes while I was distracted. She could have easily gone into my settings, grabbed my Apple ID, written down my 2-factor authentication code if one popped up. The timing matched exactly with that Apple email. I called Veronica first thing the next morning. I told her about this memory. She told me to write down every detail while it was fresh. I sent her the detailed write-up that night. She responded within an hour. This is exactly the kind of specific memory we need. 2 days later, the district IT department sent over access logs for my school laptop. Every time it was turned on, connected to the network for the past 6 months. Every login was during school hours, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., always from the school's IP address. Never from home, never off-site. Not a single login at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. when those fake messages were being sent. It wasn't proof by itself, since the messages went through my phone and Apple account, not the laptop, but it backed up my claim that I wasn't awake and active during those late-night hours. I forwarded the logs to Benjamin and Ahmed immediately. 3 days after that, I was lying on my couch in the middle of the afternoon. What else was I going to do on paid leave? When my phone buzzed. Instagram notification. A message request from an account with no profile picture. Username just random letters and numbers. The message said, Jenna told me things got out of hand and she doesn't know how to stop it now. My heart started racing. I wanted to respond immediately, to ask who this was, what Jenna said. But I remembered Veronica's instructions. Don't make any contact without running it past Benjamin first. I screenshotted the message and sent it to him, my hands shaking. He called back in less than 5 minutes. Did you respond? No, I didn't touch it. He sounded relieved. Leave the account unread. Don't block it. Don't respond. Just let it sit there. He was going to try to figure out who owned the account. Benjamin called back the next morning. The Instagram account belonged to Marissa Powell, one of Jenna's close friends. He tracked it down through some legal process I didn't fully understand. He asked if I knew Marissa. I told him I'd had her in class. She was quiet, never caused problems, but I didn't know her well. Benjamin said he was going to contact Marissa's parents through proper legal channels, and see if she was willing to provide a statement about what Jenna told her. I asked if that was safe, if it could backfire and make us look like we were going after Jenna's friends. Benjamin said, as long as we go through parents and follow all the right procedures, it should be okay. A week went by with no word. I started to think Marissa's parents had shut it down, but then Benjamin emailed. Marissa agreed to give a statement with her parents present. He attached a copy. I sat at my kitchen table and read it. Marissa said Jenna was really upset back in September when I hadn't written her college recommendation letter as quickly as she wanted. Marissa said Jenna's parents were fighting a lot at home, talking about separation, and Jenna felt like I was the only stable adult who actually cared about her. The statement described how Jenna would talk about our tutoring sessions constantly, how she felt like I understood her better than her own parents, how she started to depend on our conversations to get through her day. It wasn't a confession that Jenna faked the messages, but it gave context for why she might have done something this extreme. Benjamin called after I'd had time to read it. He explained Marissa provided more details in a follow-up. Jenna felt abandoned when I had to cancel 2 Saturday tutoring sessions in a row because of family emergencies on my end. That was back in early October, right around the time of that Apple ID email. Marissa's statement said, that's when Jenna started talking about making him see how much I meant to her, about showing him that I couldn't just drop her like everyone else in her life had. Marissa hadn't understood what Jenna meant at the time, thought she was just being dramatic. Reading this made me feel sick. I remembered those cancellations. I remembered feeling guilty about letting Jenna down, but I had legitimate family stuff to handle. I never imagined she'd take it this hard, or that it would lead to this. Benjamin warned me the next day that we needed to be really careful with Marissa's statement. It could look like we were attacking or intimidating a minor, trying to paint Jenna as mentally unstable or manipulative. We would share Marissa's information with HR and investigators only as context, not to publicly discredit Jenna or make her look bad. The goal was to show investigators that Jenna had a possible motive based on her emotional state and the timeline of events, not to destroy a teenager's reputation. I agreed. Even though I was furious at what Jenna did, she was still a kid. I didn't want to hurt her more than this situation already had. Ronan sent an email a few days later. The investigation was being paused, pending the police department's review. Criminal matters take precedence over employment issues. HR had to wait for law enforcement to finish. I was stuck in limbo on paid leave. It sounded better than it was. I was going completely stir-crazy at home. I couldn't go to school, couldn't see my students, couldn't do the job I'd spent 6 years building a career around. Meanwhile, my reputation was being destroyed online. Against my better judgment, I checked the school's Facebook page. Parents demanding answers, calling for my immediate termination, saying their kids weren't safe. My name still wasn't officially public, but enough people knew. Then the anonymous tips started coming into the school. Leah, the SRO, contacted Benjamin. They'd received multiple calls and emails claiming other victims, that I had a pattern of inappropriate behavior with female students going back years. Benjamin requested details. Leah said they were investigating, but so far none had produced actual complainants or evidence. The tips were vague. Other students have complained, or there are rumors. But when investigators followed up, no one was willing to make a statement. It felt like people were piling on now that I was vulnerable, making up stories or exaggerating normal interactions to be part of the drama. Every new tip sent Benjamin and Veronica scrambling to defend against claims that didn't even have names attached. Ahmed finally completed his full forensic report after 3 weeks of analysis. 40 pages of technical details I barely understood. But the conclusion was clear. Messages were sent from a Mac computer using my Apple ID during specific times when my phone's location data showed I was either at school in meetings with other teachers present or at home asleep based on my phone's movement patterns and screen activity. The report included detailed explanations of how iMessage syncing works, how someone with brief access to an unlocked phone could have obtained Apple ID credentials and 2-factor codes, and how they could have set up a Mac to send and receive messages that would appear to come from my number. Ahmed included screenshots of the device list showing the unknown Mac, the IP address data pointing to Jenna's neighborhood, and a timeline of when that Mac was first added to my account in October. Veronica took Ahmed's report and formally submitted it to HR, requesting it be included in my personnel file. She was building a paper trail, showing we'd been cooperative and transparent, provided extensive technical evidence, and followed every proper procedure. This documentation would matter if this went to a formal hearing or if the union needed to defend me against termination. It showed we took this seriously from day one, not just denying everything without backing it up. My colleagues started reaching out privately over the next week. Apparently, Ronan had been interviewing teachers who had Jenna in their classes or observed my interactions with her. 3 different teachers messaged me, saying they told Ronan they noticed Jenna was overly familiar with me, that she brought me gifts constantly, stayed after class every single day, and talked about me to other students in ways that seemed inappropriate. One teacher, Mrs. Anderson, told me she actually pulled Jenna aside once and warned her about maintaining appropriate boundaries. Mrs. Anderson said she noticed Jenna was treating me more like a friend or older boyfriend than a teacher, and it made her uncomfortable. She told Jenna that bringing coffee and gifts every week wasn't normal student behavior and that she needed to back off a little. According to Mrs. Anderson, Jenna got defensive and said I was the only teacher who really understood her, and that other teachers were just jealous of their relationship. Reading these messages from colleagues made me feel validated, but also guilty. I should have noticed these warning signs myself and shut it down earlier. That weekend, I spread every calendar, planner, and attendance record I owned across my kitchen table and started building a timeline. Month by month, every class period, faculty meeting, parent conference, tutoring session, from September through March. For each day a fake message was sent, I documented exactly where I was, pulling up old emails and texts to other teachers to prove it. A message sent to Jenna at 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in November? My calendar showed an 8 a.m. department meeting the next morning that I led, with notes I'd prepared the night before at 9 p.m. I found a photo I posted on social media at 10:30 p.m. that night, showing my cat asleep on my lap while I graded papers. I was building proof that I was home, asleep, living my normal, boring life, while someone else was using my Apple ID to send those messages. The timeline took me 3 full days to complete. By Sunday night, I had a 40-page document with timestamps, locations, and witnesses for almost every hour of the past 6 months. I sent it to Benjamin and Veronica. Benjamin called back within an hour. This is exactly what we need. Benjamin filed preservation letters with Jenna's parents' attorney on Monday morning. The letters demanded they preserve all of Jenna's devices, her cloud storage accounts, any computers in their home, and all internet router logs. He was creating a legal record that if they deleted anything now, it would look like destroying evidence. The letter explained we had technical proof messages were sent from a Mac in their neighborhood, and we were prepared to subpoena device records to prove which specific computer was used. Benjamin told me this was a strategic move. Even if we never actually got access to Jenna's devices, the preservation letter put pressure on them and showed we were serious about fighting this. He was building the foundation for potentially proving exactly how she did it, and the letter made clear we weren't just going to accept these accusations without a real fight. 2 days later, Marissa reached out again, through her parents, who contacted Benjamin directly. She sent a screenshot she'd saved from a group chat back in January, weeks before the accusations started. In the screenshot, Jenna was talking to friends about me. The messages said things like, "I'm going to make him see me differently, and he needs to understand how much I need him." There was another message where Jenna said, "He's the only one who gets me, and I can't just be another student to him." The screenshot wasn't proof that Jenna faked the messages, but it showed her mindset was getting unhealthy long before any of this blew up. It showed she was thinking about me in ways that went beyond a normal student-teacher relationship, and she was actively planning to change how I saw her. Benjamin saved the screenshot and added it to our evidence file. I felt this weird mix of validation and guilt. This proved Jenna was fixated on me, but I still missed all the warning signs. Benjamin and Veronica had a long phone call that night about whether to use Marissa's screenshot. Veronica was worried it would look like we were trying to paint a 16-year-old girl as manipulative or mentally unstable, which could backfire and make people sympathize with Jenna even more. Benjamin argued the screenshot provided important context about Jenna's state of mind and her intentions toward me. They went back and forth for over an hour. Finally, they decided to share it only with HR and investigators as background context. We wouldn't leak it publicly. We wouldn't show it to the media. It was just context to help investigators understand the full picture of what was happening in the months before the accusations. Benjamin sent it to Ronan with a cover letter explaining we were providing it confidentially. 3 days later, Ronan emailed me directly with Benjamin and Veronica copied. The email said he was scheduling what he called a Loudermill hearing for next week, a pre-disciplinary meeting where I'd have a chance to respond to all the evidence before any final employment decision. Benjamin called me right after the email. "This is actually a good sign," he said. "It meant the district was following proper procedures instead of just firing me on the spot. The Loudermill hearing was my chance to present my side, show all the technical evidence, explain what really happened." Benjamin said we'd prepare carefully and bring everything. Ahmed's forensic report, the carrier records, my timeline, all the documentation showing someone else accessed my Apple ID. He sounded almost optimistic for the first time in weeks, and I tried to let myself feel a little bit of hope. But then Veronica called with bad news. Word was getting back to her through her contacts in the district that some board members were pushing hard for my immediate termination, regardless of what the evidence showed. They were arguing the optics of keeping me employed were too risky for the district, that parents were scared, and that even if I didn't actually send the messages, the whole situation made me a liability. Other board members wanted to wait for the police investigation results and see what the Loudermill hearing revealed. Veronica said there was a real split on the board. At least 3 members had already made up their minds. I needed to go. She told me to prepare for the possibility that even with all our evidence, the board might decide my career wasn't worth the public relations nightmare. I hung up, feeling like no matter how much proof we gathered, politics and fear might win anyway. The next morning, Benjamin called with better news. Leah, the SRO, had contacted him. The DA had reviewed the case and was declining to file criminal charges at this time. The official reason: evidentiary concerns and conflicting technical findings. It wasn't an exoneration. It wasn't the DA saying I was innocent, but it meant I wasn't facing criminal prosecution. Benjamin explained this was huge. It took the worst possible outcome off the table. I wasn't going to be arrested. I wasn't going to face trial. I wouldn't have a criminal record, even if the employment case went badly. The DA looked at Ahmed's forensic report showing the unknown Mac, looked at the carrier records showing no SMS texts, and decided there was too much reasonable doubt about who actually sent those messages. I felt this massive weight lift off my chest. At least I knew I wasn't going to jail, even if I might still lose my teaching license. That night, I sat in my apartment and recorded a personal statement on my phone. I explained the whole situation from my perspective, talked about the Apple ID hijacking, described how I tried to help Jenna and it got twisted into something terrible. I thought about posting it on Reddit or YouTube, just putting my side out there so people could hear the truth directly from me. But then I called Benjamin and Veronica, and they both immediately told me to hold off. Anything I posted publicly could still be used against me in the employment case. The district's attorney would comb through every word looking for admissions or inconsistencies. Veronica added that going public might make me feel better temporarily, but it could make the board members even more defensive and determined to fire me. I saved the recording in a private folder and tried to accept that sometimes defending yourself means staying silent and trusting the process, even when every part of you wants to scream the truth. The Loudermill hearing was scheduled for the following Monday at 10 a.m. I arrived at the district office with Veronica and Benjamin at 9:45, feeling like I was about to throw up. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my folder. We walked into the conference room. The panel was already there. Ronan sat at the head of the table, his stack of investigation files in front of him. Principal Horns sat to his right, looking uncomfortable. 2 district administrators I'd never met sat across from them, stern and official in business suits. The room had cold fluorescent lighting, a big window overlooking the parking lot. There was a water pitcher and glasses on the table, but my mouth was so dry I don't think I could swallow anything. Benjamin and Veronica sat on either side of me. Veronica touched my arm briefly, trying to steady me. Ronan started the hearing, reading a formal statement about the purpose and procedures. I tried to focus on his words instead of the panic rising in my chest. I presented my timeline first, walking the panel through the 40-page document showing where I was during every fake message timestamp. My voice shook at the start, but I pushed through it, pointing out specific examples. The 2 a.m. message sent while I was provably asleep before an early morning meeting. I showed them the carrier records, proving I sent 0 SMS texts to Jenna's number, explaining that every message went through iMessage, which meant they all could have been sent from that unknown Mac. I pulled out the Apple ID email from October and explained how Jenna borrowed my phone right around that date, how she could have grabbed my credentials and 2-factor code in those few minutes. I admitted straight out that I made mistakes with the informal tutoring, that I should have filed proper paperwork, and shouldn't have accepted gifts like coffee and cards. But I looked each panel member in the eye and told them I never sent those messages, that someone else accessed my account and created this nightmare. While I made errors in judgment about boundaries, I never crossed the line into inappropriate conduct. Benjamin passed around copies of Ahmed's forensic report. The panel members started flipping through the pages. Ahmed stood up. One of the administrators asked him to explain his findings in simple terms. Ahmed pulled out a printed diagram showing how Apple's messaging system works. He explained that when you sign into iMessage on a new device, it syncs all your past conversations and lets you send messages that appear to come from your phone number. He pointed to the metadata from the unknown Mac, showing the panel exactly when it was used to send messages to Jenna. Then, he pulled up my phone's location data from the same timestamps, showing I was either at the school in documented meetings or at home asleep. The panel members leaned forward, looking at the side-by-side comparison. I could see them starting to understand. An administrator asked how someone could have gotten my Apple ID credentials. Ahmed explained that with brief access to an unlocked phone, someone could grab the username and intercept the two-factor code, especially if they knew what they were doing. Ronan asked if there was any way I could have sent the messages from the Mac myself. Ahmed said, technically yes, but then I need to explain why my phone's location data and my documented schedule proved I wasn't the one using that device during those specific times. The questioning went on for maybe 20 minutes. Ahmed stayed calm and confident through all of it, never getting defensive or uncertain. When he sat back down, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we'd given them enough doubt. Benjamin stood up next, his whole presentation ready on his laptop. He pulled up a slide, showing 2 columns. On the left, he listed the boundary violations I was admitting to, like undocumented Saturday tutoring sessions and accepting gifts. On the right, he listed the allegations of an inappropriate relationship and grooming behavior. He walked the panel through each column, explaining that the left column represented poor judgment and policy violations deserving corrective action, while the right column represented serious misconduct that the technical evidence strongly suggested was fabricated by someone else. He proposed a corrective action plan, mandatory professional boundaries training, regular check-ins with a mentor-teacher, documented procedures for any future student interactions outside normal class time. He emphasized that I was taking full responsibility for my mistakes, but terminating me for misconduct I didn't commit would be unjust given the forensic evidence. One of the administrators asked why I didn't follow proper procedures in the first place. Benjamin acknowledged that I made errors in judgment trying to help a struggling student, but those errors don't equal the predatory behavior I was being accused of. The presentation took 15 minutes. When Benjamin sat down, I felt like I couldn't breathe from the tension. Ronan stood up, thanked everyone. He said the panel needed to deliberate privately and would provide a written determination within 5 business days. 5 days. It felt like forever when my entire career was hanging in the balance. We all stood up. I looked at Principal Horns, but he wouldn't make eye contact. Veronica touched my elbow, guiding me toward the door. Benjamin followed. We walked into the hallway, and I felt like my legs might give out. Veronica said I did everything I could, and now we just had to wait. But waiting felt impossible. Benjamin said the forensic evidence was strong, and my admission of the boundary violations, without trying to minimize them, probably helped. But he couldn't predict which way the panel would go. We walked out to the parking lot. I got in my car and just sat there for a long time, staring at the steering wheel before I could even start the engine. The next 3 days were the worst of my life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything except imagining what the panel was discussing. I kept checking my email every 5 minutes, even though I knew the determination wouldn't come this fast. On the 3rd day, my phone rang. It was Benjamin. My heart raced before I even answered. He said Leah had just called him. The DA had officially closed the criminal investigation without filing charges. The technical evidence created enough reasonable doubt about who actually sent the messages, and without being able to prove beyond reasonable doubt that I was the one on that Mac, they couldn't move forward. Benjamin said this was huge for the employment case. Now the district couldn't point to pending criminal charges as justification for termination. I felt this wave of relief, so strong I actually started crying on the phone. Benjamin gave me a minute to pull myself together. We're not out of the woods yet, he said, because the district can still fire you for the boundary violations alone. But the criminal case being closed definitely weakens their position. I thanked him about 6 times and hung up, sitting on my couch, feeling like maybe I could breathe again. 2 days later, the email arrived. 4:47 p.m. on a Friday. Subject line, Loudermill hearing determination. I stared at it for a full minute before I could make myself open it. The email was formal, cold. 3 paragraphs of official district language. The first paragraph. After careful review of all evidence and testimony, the panel has determined that while the evidence regarding the alleged inappropriate text messages is inconclusive, one did violate district policies regarding undocumented student contact and acceptance of inappropriate gifts. The second paragraph. I was being issued a formal written reprimand, which would remain in my personnel file, and I was required to complete professional boundaries training within 60 days. The third paragraph. I would be reassigned to a different school for the next term to provide a fresh start for all parties involved. I read it 3 times, trying to process what it meant. I wasn't fired. I still had my job. But I was being punished, moved, and my reputation was still destroyed. I forwarded the email to Veronica and Benjamin. Veronica called me within 10 minutes. This is actually a pretty good outcome, given how bad things looked a month ago. She said the reprimand sucked, but it wasn't termination. And the reassignment might actually be better than trying to go back to my old school where everyone knew what happened. The next morning, I got a letter via certified mail from an attorney representing Jenna's parents. 2 pages of legal language, but the main point was clear. They were withdrawing their immediate threat of a lawsuit, but the letter specifically stated they were reserving all civil options and made it very clear they still believed their daughter's version of events. No apology, no acknowledgement that maybe the messages were fake, no recognition that the DA closed the case. Just this cold legal letter, stepping back from litigation while making sure I knew they still thought I was guilty. I read it, sitting at my kitchen table, feeling this mix of relief and anger. Relief that I wasn't facing a lawsuit right now. Anger that they couldn't even consider the possibility that their daughter lied. I put the letter in the folder with all my other documentation and tried to move forward. I made the mistake of checking Facebook that afternoon. The posts were still there. Parent groups still talking about that teacher and the investigation, even though the case was closed. My name was out there forever now, connected to words like inappropriate and boundary violations and investigation. I Googled myself. The first results were local news articles about a teacher being investigated at my school. Even though they didn't name me, anyone who knew me would know it was about me. I realized this was never going away. 10 years from now, someone could Google my name and find traces of this nightmare. I closed my laptop, trying not to think about how every future job interview, every parent-teacher conference, every interaction with colleagues would be colored by this. Principal Horns emailed me 2 weeks later. I was allowed to return to campus to pack up my classroom, but I needed to do it after hours when students weren't around. I drove to the school at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. The hallways were empty and dark, except for the emergency lights. My footsteps echoed on the tile floors. I walked to my classroom, unlocked the door. Seeing all my stuff still arranged, like I'd be back tomorrow, made my chest tight. I started taking down posters, packing books into boxes. Every item felt like a piece of my old life that was gone now. The coffee mug Jenna gave me was still on my desk. I stared at it for a long time before throwing it in the trash. It took me 3 hours to pack everything. When I was carrying the last box to my car, I looked back at the building and realized I'd probably never walk these halls again. Even if I wanted to come back, even if they'd let me. Too much had been broken. Benjamin called the following week. The state teaching license board sent him a letter. They'd be reviewing my case since there was a formal investigation. Given the outcome and the technical evidence showing the messages were likely fabricated, he expected they'd close it with at most a cautionary note in my file. But it was another few months of waiting and uncertainty, another process hanging over my head. I asked him how long this was going to follow me. He was quiet for a minute. Then, he said formal investigations leave a paper trail that never fully disappears. But the fact that I wasn't terminated or criminally charged would matter to future employers. It wasn't the reassurance I wanted, but it was honest. I appreciated that he wasn't sugarcoating things. My landlord called me 3 weeks after the district determination. He was uncomfortable. He said some other tenants had expressed concerns after hearing about the accusations. While he wasn't evicting me, he'd really prefer if I found somewhere else to live when my lease was up in 2 months. My face got hot. I wanted to argue, to explain I was cleared, but I could see in his expression that it wouldn't matter. The damage was done. I started apartment hunting that weekend. Found a place across town that was smaller and cost $200 more per month. The moving costs and higher rent ate into my savings. I was exhausted. I loaded boxes into a rental truck on a Saturday morning, driving across town, trying not to think about how I was basically running away from my own neighborhood because people thought I was a predator. Veronica called the week after I moved. She found a therapist who worked with teachers who'd been through false accusations. I didn't want to go, but she was pretty firm about it being part of my recovery process. I scheduled an appointment for the following Thursday. The therapist's office was in a medical building downtown. I sat in the waiting room, feeling like everyone could see right through me. The first session was awkward as hell. I gave her the short version. She just nodded, took notes without much reaction. I left feeling like I wasted an hour and $150. The second session wasn't much better, but by the third session, something shifted. I actually started talking about why I let things get so blurry with Jenna in the first place. The therapist asked me what I was getting from all those coffee chats and Saturday tutoring sessions. I realized I was getting validation. Real validation. that I was making a difference, that I was the favorite teacher, that I was actually good at this job. She pointed out that needing that validation made me ignore warning signs about the relationship becoming too personal. Sitting there on her couch, it hit me. I let a student bring me coffee every Friday because it felt good to be appreciated. And I didn't see how that was crossing a line until it was way too late. 2 weeks after that session, Benjamin emailed me. He'd reached out to Jenna's parents through their attorney, offering a mediated conversation where I could explain what happened and they could ask questions in a controlled setting with both attorneys present. Their response came back 3 days later, ice cold. Their attorney wrote that they appreciated the offer, but they had no interest in hearing my explanation. The letter made it super clear they still viewed me as having hurt their daughter, regardless of what the technical evidence showed. Benjamin forwarded me the email, adding a note that this was pretty common in these cases. Even when you're cleared, some people will never believe you're innocent. I read the email twice, then closed my laptop. There was nothing I could do to change their minds. Veronica called me a week later with news about Marissa. She transferred to a different school and sent a note through the union office. She felt guilty about the whole situation, but her parents didn't want her involved anymore. Veronica asked if I wanted to respond. I told her no. Benjamin had already warned me to maintain complete separation from anything involving Jenna or her friends. I wasn't about to mess that up now. I thanked Veronica, and that was the end of it. Marissa was gone from my life, just like everything else from that school. The state license board letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in a thin envelope. My hands shook as I pulled it from the mailbox. I opened it right there in the parking lot of my apartment building. The letter said they were closing their review with a notation in my file about boundary awareness concerns, but no formal discipline. My teaching license remained active and unrestricted, which meant I could keep teaching. I could keep my career. I could actually move forward. I read the letter 3 times to make sure I was understanding it correctly. Then I went back inside and put it in a folder with all the other documentation. It wasn't an exoneration, but it was enough to let me keep going. My first day at the new school assignment happened 3 weeks later. I was so nervous, I almost threw up in the parking lot. I kept thinking the staff knew, that parents had Googled me, that I'd walk in and face whispers and suspicious looks all over again. But the principal greeted me in the main office, professional and welcoming. She showed me to my new classroom, introduced me to the teachers next door. They were polite if a bit reserved. I couldn't tell if they knew anything or if this was just normal new teacher treatment. One brought me a spare stapler. Another told me where the good coffee machine was hidden. I spent the day setting up my classroom, trying not to compare it to the room I had to pack up in the dark 3 months ago. I implemented strict new policies for myself starting day 1. All student communication happens through official school email only. No exceptions. Tutoring sessions are documented in writing and happen only in the library with other people present. I keep my classroom door open during any one-on-one conversations. I never accept gifts from students, not even a stick of gum. If a student tries to give me something, I thank them and suggest they give it to the school office for the teacher appreciation basket instead. The boundaries felt excessive and paranoid at first, like I was building walls, being cold and distant when I should be warm and approachable. But gradually I realized these structures actually make me feel safer and more confident. I know I'm protected if anyone ever tries to manipulate the relationship again. That peace of mind is worth being less accessible. 3 months into the new assignment, I got another letter from the license board. This one officially closed my case with no further action required. I kept the letter in a folder with all the other documentation from the investigation. Carrier records showing I never sent those texts. Forensic reports proving someone else accessed my Apple ID. Hearing transcripts from the Loudermill. The district's determination letter. Everything is in that folder, just in case I ever need to defend myself again. Just in case someone tries to bring this up years from now. Just in case the nightmare starts over. I wrote out the whole story in a private document one Saturday afternoon when I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every detail, from the lunch interruption to the final license board letter. I typed for 3 hours straight. When I was done, it was 15 pages long. Part of me wanted to post it anonymously online, to warn other teachers, to tell them to be careful, to explain how easily this can happen. But Benjamin advised against it. He said even anonymous posts could be traced back and used against me if Jenna's parents ever did file a civil suit. So the document stays private, saved on my laptop in a password-protected folder that only I can access. 6 months after everything started, I was chaperoning a district-wide academic competition when I spotted her across the main hall. Jenna. She was standing with her new school's team, wearing their colors, holding a binder, laughing at something another student just said. She didn't see me. I was behind a registration table, helping check teams in. I froze for a second, just watching her, looking so normal and happy. Part of me felt this hot anger bubbling up. She almost destroyed my entire life. Cost me thousands in legal fees, made me move apartments, put me through 6 months of pure hell. But another part of me just felt sad for whatever was going on in her head that made her think framing me was somehow a solution to whatever she was dealing with. I didn't approach her. I just turned back to my clipboard and kept checking in teams. Eventually her group moved to their competition room, and I didn't see her again that day. I'm still teaching. My license is intact. I survived this whole nightmare, but I'm different now in ways that are both good and bad. I'm way more careful and professional with every single student interaction. I document everything. I never meet with students alone. I keep my classroom door open during any one-on-one conversations. The boundaries feel safer, but they also feel like walls. I've lost some of the warmth and openness that made me good at connecting with students in the first place. Kids don't stay after class to chat anymore because I'm polite but distant. And I don't get nominated for Teacher of the Year or receive handmade cards. The career I worked 6 years to build is still here. I still have my license and my job, but it's altered in ways I'm still learning to accept. I am a teacher who survived being framed. So, I have to ask you, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced something so twisted, where trust was completely shattered and you had to fight just to prove your own innocence? Tell me what you think. I really want to know your perspective.